So previously we've established that Cossacks are a very diverse and very widespread culture of militarized freemen that, depending on the nation we're talking about, was more or less integrated into the military, but since Polish and Russians are bastards, they were treated like shit and Cossacks understandably rebelled. A lot. It is actually surprising how many famous both Ukrainian and Russian Cossacks have died martyrs either because of Turks or because of rebellions. Obviously all of these rebellions ultimately failed, and afterwards a very interesting conundrum happened. Regardless of their national identity once thwarted, they all, peasants, traders, artisans, Jews, nobles of various caliber, ran away to relatively unexplored territories and settled there, gathering their power and influence. The language barrier and/or conflicting cultural beliefs only strengthened their resolve. As one could imagine, this was used by those wanting more powers for themselves. Cossacks were used by various rebellious nobles and hetmans to piss in the nation's stew. The biggest of these tantrums was the Khmelnytsky Rebellion, the Dmitrietes, and the Stepan Razin Rebellion. I won't go into a lot of details about them. After all, these things are better to be talked about separately so that you would understand the magnitudes of incompetence one will see in those, but these three events could be considered the pinnacle or ratification of Cossack cultural identities. The sieges were unifying into one big distinct power. A power that was, and to some extent still is, ridiculed by Russians, Poles and some Ukrainians, but enough about the trivia, let's talk about Cossack cultures. The most common and the first culture you'll probably stumble upon when researching Cossacks on the internet will probably be either Don-Cuban Cossacks or Zaporizhian Cossacks, the Russian and Ukrainian respectively. Zaporizhian Cossacks, or to be more specific Lower Zaporizhian Cossacks, were the guys that created the Hetmanate, the first short-lived Ukrainian nation that is considered to be the foundation of Ukrainian cultural identity. Whether it's true or not is a subject of heated nationalistic rhetoric, but long story short, Zaporizhian Cossacks were a peculiar combination of Rusin beliefs and ideas with Polish beliefs and ideas, supported by Russian and Moldovan ideals and a bit of beliefs, and it was the Hetmanate that consolidated these into their own thing. They were the rugged and hardy people ruled by military commanders of various affiliations and personal goals that frankly were too noisy for their own good. Once Russians and Poles got tired of these guys, the Hetmanate quickly crumbled into a civil war and was divided, but Cossacks as a class remained, aka a lot of them just ran away into Moldova or other Cossack settlements, and they remained there until their services were no longer required. In Poland this happened after another set of Cossack peasant rebellions. In Russia this happened after Crimea was conquered. However, though Ukrainian Cossacks were destroyed, they were transferred to other Cossack hosts, introducing and integrating parts of their culture. It is safe to say that a lot of modern Cossack identity came from Ukrainians. Meanwhile, Russian Cossacks are confusing. See, though they have a lot of similarities, they have to be divided into at least two major branches in order to represent the differences in their tactics and general beliefs: Don-Kuban and Yaik Siberian. The first one people might know as the Horse Cossacks, one could see in a lot of films and games. They were created from nomadic tribes and Slavic refugees from Lower Donetsk that settled near Don River. Soon other refugees, runaway peasants and poor Russian nobility flocked to them, creating the officially recognized main Don army that pledged their allegiance to Russian Tsar for both cultural and pragmatic reasons. Unlike their Ukrainian counterpart, these Cossacks were loyal, but a big problem for the Russian administration, and so after Stepan Razin they were absorbed into Greater Russia. After this they were further bolstered with Ukrainian Cossacks that were relocated to Kuban region, the land of wild, bold Caucasian tribes. From them they adopted their traditional uniforms, style of warfare, and what's most important, solidified their love for horses that was formed in them thanks to Russian nobility and Tatar influence. These are the main and most important differences of Don-Kuban Cossacks from infantry and artillery heavy Polish-Moldovan influenced Zaporizhians. As for Yaik Siberian Cossacks, they differ from others in that they were the melting pot of Don Cossacks, Siberian colonists, various local Tatar tribes, prisoners of war sent there, and even Chinese. The culture of these Cossacks was anarchic, freedom-loving, and very lax, to the point where Buddhist, Muslim, and even Lutheran Cossacks were pretty common. This notion of freedom and unity in their love of said freedom is what kept them not only combat-ready when they were fighting with pikes and axes in 18th century, but also visually and culturally distinct from other Cossacks. So it stands to no surprise that once Russia tried to tame them, this turned into the Pugachev's Rebellion, the last grand Cossack rebellion in the Russian Empire that saw Yaik renamed into Ural. But, well, this couldn't last forever. During Russian Civil War, Cossacks for the most part either sided with pro-Tsar side of the conflict or decided to be independent, for which they were then punished by the Soviets. The fact that a big number of them sided with Nazis during the Second World War only sealed the coffin for the Cossacks' culture and identity. But auntie, I hear you say, what about all those modern Russian and Ukrainian Cossacks? Isn't this the resurrection of Cossackdom? Well, I'll be brief. Real Cossacks died after Stalin came to power. Those modern Cossacks are role players. Nothing more, nothing less. They've done nothing useful, therefore I'm indifferent. Tune in next time as I'll talk about how one can use Cossacks in the game.